Hello and welcome to the WriteCome.com podcast, where we help you to make money from your words. Each episode will be sharing tips, tricks, and strategies you can use to make more money from your writing, publishing, and marketing to your fans and audience. Let's get started with your host, Barry J. McDonald.
Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very, very welcome to this podcast episode from WriteCome.com. And today I want to ask you to look backwards instead of looking forwards. Now, for a lot of people, unfortunately, they will look at where they are and they will look forwards. They will look to everybody who is ahead of them, everyone who is a better blogger than they are, everyone who is a better podcaster than they are, everyone who has a larger, Instagram following, everyone who has a huge Facebook following or whatever. But they're constantly looking forward. They're looking for the people who are ahead of them. And because they do that, they kind of, unfortunately, in my own case as well too, you kind of take on this kind of mentality that you are the second best, or maybe you're the third best, or you see yourself as further down the list than everybody else because you're so far behind everyone else. But what I want you to do now, instead of looking forward, I want you to start looking backwards. I want you to look at the people who are further back than you are. Now, why am I asking you to do that? Well, in one way, the first thing it'll probably do, it'll give you a little bit more confidence in yourself. If you start looking back at the people who aren't doing the things that you are doing, it'll give you a bit of confidence, maybe how far you've moved on from maybe the very first day when you wrote your very first, your first blog article, or maybe the first day you ever recorded your first Facebook Live, compared to people who at the moment have never probably even done one of those, how far you are from ahead of those people. And another thing then too as well, it will kind of maybe lift off this kind of this identity that you have, that you're not an expert. Now, back when I left school, unfortunately, I was a little bit kind of directionalist. A lot of my friends had gone to the career counselor, and they had asked, well, what should I do in the future? And a lot of them had gone off to college. They had ideas for what they wanted to do next. But Barry, being somebody who was a little bit on the lazy side and just didn't really know what to do with his life, I spent the next 12 months of my life at home. And a lot of that time was probably being a pain in the ass for my mother because I was hanging around the house. I wasn't bringing any money in, and I was watching a lot of TV. So it came to a stage my father just had enough, and he said to him, well, I'm going to get you a job somewhere. I'm going to get you in somewhere. And he pulled a few strings and he got me on an electronics course. Now, electronics was, it was a little bit exciting for me. It was, was something new. It was something I'd never ever done before, and I did enjoy doing it. So at the time, I think it was like a 10-week course or something like that. But for the last 2 weeks of the course, it was something like you had to go on work experience. So what we had to do during the course, we had to go around local companies and, show ourselves and say, by the way, we are on such and such a course and we're looking for some work experience. Is there any chance you could get us in and get us working, for a couple of weeks at the end of our course? So the gentleman who was running the course at the time sent me and a friend of mine to one of these computer factories. Now, I'd never heard of the computer factory before, but what they did was they made computer keyboards. And when the two of us went, whatever happened, I think one of the ladies or whatever had left the assembly line. I think she was off on maternity leave. So they had a slot, and they were probably looking for cheap labour at the time, somebody to fill the gap, and they took the two of us on. Now, being someone who had never ever been in a factory before or never ever been on an assembly line, I was probably like one of those kids who walked into, who was in the Willy Wonka film, who, when Gene Wilder had opened the door, when they seen what was ahead of them, and my jaw was kind of falling open. I was watching machinery going off everywhere. A lot of people were probably, standing around looking at us as if, like almost like a prison scene where we were the fresh meat that was coming in. They probably had plans for how they were going to embarrass us, or how they were going to, make a fool of us, or send us off, maybe getting some product or something that didn't really exist or whatever, just for a laugh. So we were kind of, we were like two kids in this kind of Willy Wonka factory, just kind of looking around and didn't have a clue what was going on. So the foreman anyway directed us over, and he took us over to one of the jobs we were doing. Now, we used to do 8-hour shifts in the factory, and for 4 hours of the shift, we would have to put keys on a keyboard. Now, I don't know if you've ever wondered who actually puts the keys on the keyboard. But before we actually got robots in the factory, we used to put all those keys on manually. So what would happen was somebody would have the metal plate, and what would happen below the keys, there wasn't springs. There was a kind of like a silicone little dome that would sit on top of this metal plate. And what would happen is somebody would put the first line of keys down. So they would do the Q, W, E, or T, Y. They'd go the whole way across over to the number pad and put in maybe whatever it is, 7, 8, 9 or whatever. They would put that line on, and then they would slide the keyboard on to the next person. And then the next person then would put the second line on, and then it would slide on to the next person, and then they would put the third line on. So I found myself in the middle of this. We used to call it the key topping line. And what I would have to do is I would have to keep up with the line, and I was given my own kind of line of keys. So you'd have to reach up, take the keys out of the little buckets, clip them onto the metal plate, and then put your hands back up again and grab the next 2 keys. So you're slowly working your way across the keyboard, 2 keys at a time. And then you had to make sure that when you did put the keys into the metal plate, that you didn't pinch the little domes, that there was a kind of a stem or whatever that came out of the bottom of the key, but you had to make sure that went through the center of the dome, that you didn't pinch it. So when somebody would, touch the keys at the bottom, there's like a lady who used to test all the keyboards at the bottom. She would have a machine that would she would put it in, and it kind of had mechanical fingers. It would kind of tap the whole way along the keyboard, just testing all the keys, and then it would tell her then if the keyboard was good or if it was faulty. Sometimes now you would get maybe a fault or whatever, but that was because somebody had pinched one of the little domes, and the key wasn't actually bouncing up and down freely. It was actually caught kind of in the mechanism or whatever. So that's what I did for the first couple of weeks of my first steps into the big world, where I was going to be getting actually a paid wage for my time. And that's what I had to do. Was I had to, for 4 hours, I had to keep up the key topping line. I would get the keyboard that was slid onto me. I would put my line of keys, and then I would slide it on to the next one. Now, at the time, you probably do find that, like most jobs, you are 100% concentrating. You're making sure that every key kind of goes through the hole, that you're not pinching anything, and then you're aware that people beside you have probably been doing this for weeks and months. And you do find then, unfortunately, that some of the keyboards start building up beside you, and then when you're new to the job, you start panicking, you start sweating, and you're kind of looking the other direction, and everybody is kind of waiting for you to finish your line and slide it down. And as I said, in the beginning days when I wasn't very good at it, I probably did hold back the team, but you do find over time then that you actually get a little bit better at it. You get a little faster, and then before you know it, you're not actually concentrating as much. You're not giving 100% of your effort to putting in those keys. You're probably only giving it maybe 40 or 50%, and then you're kind of looking around of what's going around beside you. There was a bit of a kind of a board below in front of us, but you could look over the board and you could watch the people walking up and down the factory floor, and you'd see what was going on. So you're only half focusing on the work that you were doing. But a couple of weeks later, there was some new recruits come in, some fresh meat, and of course me, only having a couple of weeks experience under my belt, but wanting to feel like one of the crew, I was kind of giving them the same kind of look, as if say, oh, here's the fresh meat, here's the newbies, let's see what they're going to do wrong, and wondering, what pranks were going to be played on them, when they were kind of taken around the floor. But I did find one of the people one day were brought over beside me, and they were put beside me, and they were asked the supervisor had asked me, Barry, will you show this person here how to do the key top? And so again, what I was doing was I was just basically doing what I was doing every day. But you did find then that the person was kind of asking me questions, saying, how did you get so good at that? And how do you make sure you don't pinch the domes? And how do you do this? And how do you do that? And all of that was kind of, it was second nature to me now, because I'd done so many keyboards. I didn't even really think about it. But, to that person, even though I had only a couple of weeks' experience in that little job that I had, I was an expert to them. They had never, ever seen a key topping line before. They hadn't got a clue how to put keys on. They hadn't got a clue, about any of it. And, like I was when I had started that factory, they were in complete awe. And they probably looked to me as an expert. In the same way that when I started the key topping line, I seen everybody else on that line, on that assembly line, as an expert at what they did. And you will find if you kind of look forward from where you are, everybody else will seem an expert. Everybody else seems to have far more knowledge than you have, seem to be far better writer or videoer or whatever they're doing, but they seem to be so far ahead of you. But if you do actually stop and look behind you, to the people who are coming up behind you, people who have never written something something before, people who have never ever gone on a Facebook Live, maybe somebody who has never ever recorded a podcast episode or done something that you really find easy, just like me, doing the key topping line. That was so natural to me after a couple of weeks. I could barely do it. I could even do it with my eyes closed. Some days I didn't even have to look at the buckets to see which keys I was picking up because I knew exactly where the position was, and I would just reach out and grab them, and I would be looking around doing something else. But from where you are right now, there are some people who are just like that person who came up to me on that key topping line and hadn't got a clue what to do next. You are going to be a complete expert. Unfortunately, sometimes if you are mixing in groups of people who are doing what you're doing, you just kind of assume that everybody else is doing, is up to the same level as you are, or is even further ahead. You never really consider the beginners who have never ever done what you're doing. It's almost like, in these groups, it's almost like being in a Facebook page where you are getting the same kind of content showing up to you all the time. So for example, if you were maybe a Trump fan or a Biden fan, or if you are into pole dancing or something like that, you are getting that content all the time. So you assume everybody else in the world is seeing the same content as you are, everybody else is seeing the world the same way as you are, and you never really consider the beginners who haven't got a clue, who have never done what you've done, who probably haven't got the confidence to do what you're doing right now. And as I said, sometimes in my own case here, when I'm doing this podcast challenge here, it had finished up yesterday, but one of the things I was trying to get the people over was to kind of, dismiss the fact that they're not an expert, and maybe not to stop looking forward at how far everybody else is ahead of them, but actually start looking behind you at all the beginners who are about to get into the topic that you are kind of deep in, who probably haven't got a clue about blogging, haven't got a clue about WordPress, doesn't know how to install it, maybe don't know how to, even do something as simple as put a Facebook post up. Maybe don't even know how to log into Facebook. Some people are way, way behind of you. And if you do kind of look back at those people, you will kind of see yourself as a little bit of an expert. Now, again, you can't really kid yourself, and you can't really say, well, I'm as much an expert as the people who are probably doing your business for years and years and years. They are probably far, far ahead of where you are. But as I said, I want you to, in your business, to stop looking ahead at everybody else. Maybe just to start looking behind you. Even if you aren't going to go into coaching or training or anything like that, maybe you don't want to teach or train people, even looking back from where you are right now to where you started off, even like 6 months ago, a year ago, how far were you behind then? How little did you know that you know now? And how far you have grown? And maybe just to give yourself a little bit of a pat on the shoulder, and not to kind of look down on yourself all the time, kind of dismiss the little bit of knowledge you have or the little bit of talent you have by kind of comparing yourself with everybody who is in front of you. Because you'll always find, no matter how far you are, ahead of everybody else, there will be always somebody who will be, still a kind of a step ahead of you, and you'll always kind of be playing catch up to those people. So instead of looking to those people and maybe kind of knocking your confidence, maybe not believing that you are an expert or not believing that you have anything worthwhile to take to the marketplace, start looking behind you. Start looking at those people who, again, like that person who turned up on that first day beside me in the key topping line, hasn't got a clue what you're doing, is looking at your hands and thinking they're magic, that you're not even concentrating on what you're doing, but you're still getting the job done, and how quickly your hands are moving across and putting on that line, and how quickly you're keeping up with everybody else, and probably dismissing that they would be able to get to where where you are. From where they are to where you are, it probably seems like it's going to be a huge kind of uphill climb. But from, you had gone through those trials, those kind of challenges to get to where you are. So as I said, stop looking forward at everybody else. Again, you should look forward the odd time, maybe just to see how far you need to go, or what more knowledge you need to kind of pick up, or kind of follow an expert just to kind of follow along with their breadcrumbs. But don't dismiss from where you are. From time to time, look back at the people who see you as an expert, or even look back at how far you've grown from where you've started. And I'm sure you will see that you will be impressed with how far you've come, but you won't be so hard on yourself. You kind of, you'll give yourself a pass in that, okay, you mightn't be an expert as much as everybody else, but you have come a long way from where you've started off. And as I said, people are right now are probably going to look in awe at what you do, because they haven't got a clue how to do the things that you do, and they would look, they would love to have somebody like you who could teach them those things in the future to get up to the point of where you are. So, as always, I hope maybe that's helped someone. I hope that maybe has given you a little bit more confidence in yourself. as I said, looking back sometimes can be a good thing to kind of build yourself up and not to kind of put yourself down compared to everyone else who is ahead of you. And as always, if you'd like to ask me a question, or you'd like to reach out, or you'd like me to cover something in this podcast, you're very, very welcome to send an email to barryjmcdonald@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to head over to the Rightcome site, if you'd like to know what I am up to right now, or if you'd like to pick up our great free report, which is called Words to Wealth. Now, that great free report, I'm going to show you 10 ways you can make money from your keyboard, and you don't even need to be an expert writer to do that. So if you want to pick up a copy of that, head over to Rightcome and you can pick it up there. And as always, if you like this podcast, if you'd like to maybe leave a review, or if you'd like to kind of subscribe and then follow along with me and see where I'm going in the future with my business, you are very, very welcome to do that. And as always, thanks for sharing your time again today. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like more from the Rightcome.com podcast, be sure to subscribe now for more tips, tricks, and ideas you can use to make more money from your words. See you in the next episode.